A 27-ton steel needle hung suspended above Manhattan. 860 feet below, a crowd craned their necks toward a hole in the chrome-clad crown of a skyscraper, watching as workers hoisted a long, gleaming piece of metal up from within the building. Rumors had swirled through the city that this was nothing more than a flagpole, some ornamental addition meant to claim a record. Those rumors were wrong. What rose from the chrysalis was a 185-foot spire, forged of stainless steel and assembled section by section like a segmented insect. It was October 23, 1929. Within 90 minutes, the four pieces had been riveted together, transforming a stubby dome into a shimmering sword that pierced the sky. For a moment, the world gasped. The Chrysler Building had suddenly become the tallest structure on Earth. Less than 24 hours later, the stock market collapsed, plunging the country into a decade of despair. That juxtaposition was emblematic of the man behind the tower. Walter Percy Chrysler was a self-made titan who had clawed his way from a dusty Kansas rail yard to the apex of American industry. Born in 1875 in the frontier town of Wamego, Kansas, he grew up listening to the whistle of locomotives and watching the endless procession of freight cars. His father, Henry, operated trains for the Kansas Pacific Railroad, and his mother, Anna, kept house and raised their children in a world of soot and steam. From an early age, Walter was fascinated by machines. Instead of pursuing the college education his father hoped for, he quit school at 15, took a job delivering groceries 16 hours a day, and saved enough money to follow his dream. At an age when most boys were still in school, he was apprenticing in a roundhouse, learning to repair locomotives and soaking up every detail of boilers, pistons, and gears. The railroad era shaped his character. As an apprentice mechanic, he learned discipline and respect for craftsmanship. He worked his way up to foreman and then to general master mechanic, moving from Kansas to Colorado and then to the Midwest. Those were years of relentless labor, but they were also years of education. Walter devoured technical manuals, studied modern shop practices, and taught himself algebra and trigonometry at night. In 1899, he married Della Forker, the daughter of a butcher from his hometown. Their marriage was a partnership. She supported his ambitions, managing their household and raising their children as his career advanced. By 1901, Walter's talents had attracted the attention of the American Locomotive Company, and he moved to Pittsburgh to oversee maintenance for their rolling stock. He was not yet 30, but he exuded confidence and a calm authority that impressed executives. Those qualities would propel him into the next chapter of his life: automobiles. At the turn of the century, the automobile industry was in its infancy. Wealthy hobbyists tinkered with horseless carriages, and a few visionaries foresaw a mass market for personal vehicles. Walter Chrysler was one of them. While working for the railroad, he bought a car, an extravagance for a mechanic earning 40 cents an hour, and promptly disassembled it. He studied every gear and gasket, determined to understand how it worked. His fascination grew into obsession. In 1911, he met Charles W. Nash, president of Buick Motor Company, who offered him a position overseeing Buick's manufacturing. The offer included a salary of $6,000 a year, nearly 10 times his railroad wages, and an annual bonus. Walter accepted on the spot. Within months, he was revolutionizing Buick's assembly operation. He reorganized production lines, redesigned components to be more efficient, and insisted on quality control. Workers initially resented his demands for precision, but they soon respected his mechanical insight and his willingness to do the hardest tasks himself. He streamlined the assembly process so that a car that once took 8 hours to build could be completed in less than 4. Under his leadership, Buick's output and profits surged. Nash promoted him to works manager and then to vice president of operations. In 1919, after a management shakeup at General Motors, he clashed with William C. Durant, who had returned to power. Durant offered him a lavish salary, but expected blind loyalty. Walter valued his independence more. He resigned, taking a severance package of $10 million in GM stock. He was 43 years old and wealthy for the first time, but he was not ready to retire. He set his sights on building his own automobile empire. Over the next decade, he did just that. He became vice president of Willys Overland, then helped reorganize Maxwell Motor Company and used it as a platform to launch the Chrysler Corporation in 1925. His first car, the 1924 Chrysler, featured advanced engineering like hydraulic brakes, high compression engines, and affordable prices. It was an instant success, selling more than 30,000 units in its first year and propelling the company into the top ranks of automakers. Walter promoted the brand as the working man's friend, offering quality cars to middle-class families. He treated his employees like partners and insisted that his dealers provide honest service. By 1928, Chrysler had acquired Dodge and launched the Plymouth and DeSoto brands. The company's growth seemed unstoppable. But Walter craved more than market share. He wanted a monument. New York in the late 1920s was a laboratory of ambition. Skyscrapers sprouted like steel cornstalks, each vying to be taller, more dazzling, more modern. The city's building boom was fueled by cheap credit, new structural engineering techniques, and the ego of financiers who sought to etch their names into the skyline. Among them were two architects who had once been partners, William Van Allen and Craig Severance. The pair had designed some of New York's early skyscrapers together, but their friendship soured over disagreements about fees and credit. By 1928, they were bitter rivals. Each found a patron who shared his ambition. Severance aligned himself with financier George Ostrom to design the Manhattan Company building at 40 Wall Street. Van Allen found an even more audacious backer, Walter Chrysler. Chrysler's decision to hire Van Allen was bold. Van Allen was known for his unconventional approach. He rejected the neo-Gothic ornamentation that had dominated earlier towers and embraced Art Deco, a style defined by geometric forms, sleek lines, and modern materials. When the two men met, they discovered a shared vision. Walter did not want a corporate headquarters. He wanted a personal statement. He would pay for the building himself so that his children would inherit something tangible, a legacy of steel and stone. He insisted that the building embody the spirit of the automobile, dynamic, streamlined, shining with new technology. There was, however, one glaring omission. They never signed a formal contract. Walter promised to pay Van Allen a 6% fee based on total construction costs, but he refused to put it in writing. Van Allen set to work. His design called for a tapered tower rising from a 4-story base with setbacks that stepped back like ziggurats, in compliance with the city's zoning laws that required skyscrapers to allow sunlight to reach the streets below. The exterior would be clad in white brick accented with Nirosta stainless steel, a corrosion-resistant alloy developed by Krupp. He adorned the 31st floor with gargoyles modeled on Chrysler automobile radiator caps and the 61st floor with stainless steel eagles poised like hood ornaments ready to take flight. Narrow windows, only 22 inches wide, emphasized vertical lines and gave the building a sleek, aerodynamic profile. Inside, he envisioned lavish lobbies with red Moroccan marble, yellow sienna travertine, and murals celebrating transportation and industry. Construction began in March 1929. In just 4 months, workers excavated the foundation and erected the steel skeleton up to the second floor. The pace was astonishing. Crews worked round the clock, connecting beams and columns with rivets that glowed like falling stars. By June, the building reached its 57th story, and by September, it topped 67 stories. Walter boasted that not a single worker died during the steel construction, a remarkable achievement in an era when skyscraper projects often claimed lives. He personally visited the site, walking the girders without a safety harness, urging the crew to maintain speed. Meanwhile, across town, Severance's team raced upward, determined to surpass the Chrysler project. Their building at 40 Wall Street was designed to stand at 927 feet. By mid-1929, it appeared that the Manhattan Company building might win the race for the world's tallest. Van Allen had a different plan. Quietly, he and Walter decided to add a steel spire to the top of the building. To maintain the element of surprise, the spire would be built inside the tower, hidden from competitors and the press. The sections were fabricated off-site and delivered at night. As each piece arrived, it was hoisted through the building's central shaft to the 67th floor and assembled like a ship in a bottle. The workers swore to secrecy. Not even the building inspectors knew the full extent of the plan. To the public, the Chrysler building seemed to be approaching completion with a modest crown. Only a handful of people knew that a 185-foot needle waited inside, ready to strike. On the morning of October 23, 1929, Van Allen and Walter gathered with engineers on Lexington Avenue. Clouds drifted across the sky as riggers secured cables to the first section of the spire. As the men watched, the steel beam emerged from the opening in the dome, glinting in the sunlight. Onlookers murmured, some clapped. The beam slowly rotated, cleared the edge, and descended into place on the 66th floor. Within minutes, the second, third, and fourth sections followed. By noon, the spire had been assembled and riveted. At 1,046 feet, the Chrysler building surpassed 40 Wall Street by 60 feet and even exceeded the height of the Eiffel Tower. Newspapers described the feat as a surprise attack. Van Allen likened the moment to a butterfly emerging from its chrysalis. Walter smiled, savoring his triumph. Yet the celebration was short-lived. The very next day, the stock market crashed. Wall Street's plunge wiped out fortunes and ushered in the Great Depression, casting a pall over the city. The building that had been a symbol of boundless optimism now stood as a monument to hubris on the eve of ruin. The rivalry continued briefly. Within weeks, plans for an even taller tower, the Empire State Building, were announced. Its developers, aided by Al Smith and John J. Raskob, intended to leapfrog both the Chrysler and Manhattan Company buildings. They succeeded. The Empire State Building opened in 1931 at 1,250 feet, capturing the title of world's tallest and relegating Walter's Tower to second place. But the Chrysler Building's spire remained a marvel of engineering and art. The crown's 7 terraced arches were clad in triangular plates of stainless steel arranged in radiating sunbursts, and at night, floodlights illuminated the surfaces so the tower glowed like a beacon. Its lobby, with murals by Edward Trumbull depicting airplane wings, human figures, and the building itself, celebrated the machine age with luminous panels embedded with steel and glass. On floors 66 to 68, the exclusive Cloud Club opened, offering lunch and drinks to a select membership of about 300 business leaders. The club included a Tudor-style foyer, a grill room decorated with ship models in copper, a futuristic dining room with murals by N.C. Wyeth, and a Renaissance-style staircase leading to a library. Members paid initiation fees and annual dues, and they enjoyed steak, cigars, and deals while overlooking the city. Meanwhile, Walter reserved the 69th and 70th floors for his own use, installing a two-story apartment with a private office, gymnasium, and a fireplace. Complete with what he boasted was the highest bathroom in Manhattan. From the ceramic-tiled perch, he could look down on his rivals, a literal manifestation of his desire to surpass Henry Ford and others. Despite his success, there was a darker side to Walter's story. His decision to finance the building himself protected the Chrysler Corporation from risk, but left him personally exposed. He paid for the land, the materials, and the labor out of his own pocket, expecting to recoup his investment through rents. He also assumed that his architect would be satisfied with a handshake agreement. When construction costs reached $14 million, Van Alen's 6% fee amounted to $840,000, a small fortune. After the building opened in May 1930, Van Alen presented his bill. Walter balked. He accused the architect of taking kickbacks from contractors and refused to pay. Van Alen sued. The trial revealed that there had been no written contract, but the jury nevertheless sided with the architect. Walter reluctantly paid the fee, but the public lawsuit tarnished both men. For Van Alen, the damage was fatal. In the early 1930s, architecture commissions evaporated due to the Depression, and the scandal made potential clients wary. He never received another major commission. The man who had designed the world's tallest building retreated to teaching sculpture and designing low-rise structures. Walter, for his part, moved on, his reputation bruised, but his fortune intact. In later years, he told friends that his refusal to pay was a matter of principle, claiming he had been overcharged. Outsiders saw it as a betrayal of the man who had turned his vision into reality. Even the building itself carried whispers of betrayal. Shortly after the spire was installed, rumors circulated that the building's decorative elements were not as durable as claimed. The Nerosta steel used on the crown tarnished in some places, forcing maintenance crews to polish and replace panels. The narrow windows, chosen to emphasize verticality and reduce costs, limited natural light in offices, making them less desirable. Still, the tower attracted tenants. When it opened, more than 70% of the space was leased. The Chrysler Corporation never headquartered there, preferring Detroit, but the building housed small firms, law offices, and even the observation deck known as the Celestial. Located on the 71st floor, it was decorated with a black ceiling adorned with constellations and clusters of colored glass to represent planets. Visitors paid 50 cents to ascend and gaze over the city. In the center of the corridor, Walter displayed his old toolbox, an emblem of his humble beginnings. The observation deck closed in 1945 due to competition from the Empire State Building and the need for broadcast space. The Cloud Club also declined. Membership dwindled as Texaco moved its offices to new skyscrapers and as Prohibition ended the exclusivity of private bars. By 1979, the club closed its doors for good. Personal tragedy shadowed the later years of Walter's life. In May 1938, he suffered a stroke at his country estate in Kings Point, Long Island. He was 63. 2 months later, his beloved wife Della died suddenly of a cerebral hemorrhage. They had been married for 37 years. Their partnership had sustained him through decades of tireless work, and her loss devastated him. According to friends, he became withdrawn, spending hours alone in his study, staring at the river. He never fully recovered his strength. 2 years later, on August 18, 1940, he died at age 65. He was buried beside Della. Newspapers remembered him as a creative genius who had built one of the world's greatest automobile companies and a tower that symbolized the Roaring Twenties. Yet they also noted his stubbornness and the lawsuits that had marred his legacy. The Chrysler Corporation, now led by executives he had mentored, continued to thrive for a time, but would later struggle amid changing market conditions. His children inherited his fortune and his monument. His son, Walter P. Chrysler Jr., inherited something more, a taste for art and scandal. In the 1950s, Walter Jr. assembled an eclectic collection of paintings and sculptures, some purchased from dealers of questionable repute. In 1962, he opened a gallery in Provincetown, Massachusetts, displaying nearly 200 works attributed to masters like Renoir, Gauguin, and Picasso. The exhibition, titled The Controversial Century, drew crowds but also suspicion. Members of the Art Dealers Association of America and collectors like Ralph Collin visited and declared many of the works fakes. They alerted authorities. The scandal erupted in newspapers. Headlines called it an international art fraud. Art historians pointed out glaring inconsistencies in brushwork and signatures. Picasso himself scrawled "faux" across photographs of 2 pieces purported to be his. Investigators accused Walter Jr. of buying art he knew was counterfeit, and even of failing to pay dealers. He denied intentional wrongdoing, saying he had been misled by unscrupulous intermediaries. No criminal charges were filed, but the exhibition was closed, and many works were removed. The museum eventually relocated to Norfolk, Virginia, after Provincetown officials refused a tax abatement. Some sources whispered that he was asked to leave because of allegations of homosexual solicitation. Whatever the truth, the episode tarnished the Chrysler name, casting a shadow over his father's carefully constructed legacy. As the decades passed, the Chrysler building changed hands and lost its luster. In 1953, the Chrysler family sold its interest to a group of investors led by William Zeckendorf and the Massachusetts Mutual Life Insurance Company. The building's tax exemption ended in 1961 when Cooper Union, which owned the land under the building, sold the land to the investors. Maintenance costs rose. Tenants complained of aging elevators and cramped offices. By the late 1970s, occupancy had fallen to 17%. The once glamorous Cloud Club rooms were dusty and silent. The observation deck was filled with antennas and humming equipment. In the 1990s, the building underwent a $100 million renovation that restored its stainless steel crown and polished its marble halls. The lobby's ceiling mural was cleaned and its decorative fixtures repaired. But the building could not compete with newer towers that offered large, open floor plates, central air conditioning, and expansive views. In 2008, the Abu Dhabi Investment Council purchased a 90% stake for $800 million. For a time, the infusion of foreign capital seemed to promise a revival. Tenants enjoyed refurbished common areas and new lighting. Yet within a decade, The economic realities of owning an old skyscraper reasserted themselves. By 2019, the building sold again, this time to a partnership between RFR Holding and Cigna Group for just $150 million, a price that shocked the real estate community. Analysts noted that the ground lease payments to Cooper Union were set to rise steeply, and that the small floor plates and outdated infrastructure made it difficult to attract modern tenants. Some floors sat empty, their once prestigious addresses now little more than historic footnotes. Tenants complained of murky water, pests, and intermittent air conditioning. Elevators broke down. The building's shining stainless steel still caught the afternoon sun, but inside the wear of 90 years was evident. The tower built on automobiles thus entered its twilight. Its story is a lesson in ambition and betrayal, engineering triumph and economic decline. Walter Chrysler sought to immortalize himself with steel and stone. He succeeded, but at great personal cost. His refusal to honor the contract with his architect ruined the career of the man who made his dream possible. His careful planning could not prevent the Great Depression, the death of his wife, or his own decline. His son's careless collecting dragged the family name through scandal. The skyscraper race he helped ignite produced ever taller towers that quickly eclipsed his own. In the end, the Chrysler Building stands not as the pinnacle of an empire, but as a relic of a past era, an Art Deco jewel whose gleaming spire still pierces the Manhattan sky. Today, visitors to New York stand on Lexington Avenue and crane their necks as Walter once did. They see the sun reflect off the stainless steel arches, the eagles perched like sentinels on the corners, and they marvel at the audacity of building such a structure with slide rules and rivets. Few know the secrets hidden within its walls. They do not see the hidden spire that rose in silence, the architect whose career collapsed after a lawsuit, the cloud club where deals were made and cigars smoked, the observation deck where a humble toolbox once sat as a symbol of industry. They do not hear the echo of a businessman insisting that his bathroom be the highest in Manhattan. They may not know that the man who built the tower financed it as a personal monument rather than a corporate headquarters. But the ghosts of those stories linger like the smell of oil and leather in a vintage car. The Chrysler Building remains a testament to the contradictions of the American dream, where ambition and betrayal coexist, where personal vanity and public spectacle intertwine. As you gaze at its silver spire, consider the man who built it, the mechanics who assembled it, the families who lost money in the crash the day after it rose, and the architect who walked away with an empty portfolio. The tower endures, its story etched not only in stone and steel, but in the human drama that shaped it. Although the outlines of Walter Chrysler's rise are well known, the texture of his early years reveals just how improbable his ascent was. He was born into a family of modest means. His father had fought in the Civil War and never forgot the discipline of military life. He would wake before dawn, stoke the stove, and head to the roundhouse, leaving young Walter with chores and clear expectations. Walter learned to chop wood, milk cows, and repair farm implements by watching older men in the community. In the evenings, he listened to stories told by itinerant railroad workers about derailments, blizzards, and mechanical failures. These tales fired his imagination. When locomotives thundered into the yard, spraying cinders and steam, he would run to watch them being uncoupled and refueled. He envied the engineers up in their cabs, the firemen shoveling coal, the men in greasy overalls who seemed to command the very forces of nature. But it was the maintenance crews, the men who kept the engines running, who fascinated him most. They possessed a secret knowledge: how to diagnose a sputtering cylinder, how to adjust the timing of a valve, how to improvise a repair with nothing more than a wrench and a hammer. As soon as he could, he begged the foreman to let him assist. He swept floors, fetched bolts, wiped down parts. His hands became ingrained with oil and his nose accustomed to the smell of hot metal. Those years taught him to respect the dignity of work and the satisfaction of solving mechanical problems. His path into the automobile industry was equally unusual. The decision to buy a car in 1907 was daring. Automobiles were seen by many as toys for the rich, unreliable contraptions that broke down as often as they ran. For a mechanic earning a railroad wage, purchasing a car was nearly unthinkable. Yet Walter had always been drawn to mechanical challenges. When the salesman tried to dissuade him, telling him that the vehicle he wanted was beyond his means, he responded by showing the man a bag of coins, his entire savings, and saying he would buy the car on the spot if he could pay in coin. The seller agreed. Walter spent the next several weeks disassembling the vehicle, labeling each part, studying the patterns and tolerances. When he reassembled it, he could feel every nut and bolt in its place. He understood not just how to drive the machine, but how to improve it. That curiosity impressed Charles Nash, who recognized in the Kansas mechanic a rare combination of hands-on skill and analytical mind. Walter's first week at Buick, he walked the production line, asking workers why they tightened a bolt a certain number of turns or applied grease to one surface but not another. Rather than impose changes from above, he listened. He implemented small improvements, reducing the number of parts in an assembly, standardizing screw threads, and reorganizing tool stations to minimize wasted motion. Each change saved seconds, and the seconds added up. Buick soon produced more cars with fewer defects, and profits followed. Nash gave Walter free rein, and within a few years, the former roundhouse apprentice ran one of the largest car factories in the country. The rift with William Durant in 1919 has become part of automobile lore. Durant, the founder of General Motors, had regained control of the company after a previous ouster. He respected Chrysler's ability, but resented his independence. Durant expected his executives to pledge loyalty to him personally, to stand by his risky expansions and acquisitions. Chrysler had built his reputation on solid engineering and fiscally conservative management. He believed Durant was overextending the company and exposing it to collapse. During a tense meeting in New York, Durant offered Walter a $1 million annual salary and bonuses to stay. It was an astronomical sum. But Walter asked for final say over manufacturing decisions, something Durant would not grant. Legend has it that Walter then wrote a letter of resignation and handed it to Durant, along with a note reading, "I cannot work where I cannot manage." Leaving GM, he cashed in his stock options and walked away with a fortune. For many men, this might have been the end, a comfortable retirement in Palm Beach. But Walter was restless. He joined Willys Overland not because he needed the money, but because he saw a company in trouble that he could turn around. When Willys could not pay him, he took stock instead. Then he used his earnings to buy a controlling interest in Maxwell, restructuring its debt and rebranding it as the Chrysler Corporation. His approach combined engineering excellence with shrewd marketing. The first cars bearing his name offered features like oil filters, air cleaners, and shock absorbers that competitors lacked. He used his own experiences as a mechanic to anticipate problems and innovate solutions. Customers responded enthusiastically. Soon, Chrysler dealerships dotted the country, and the corporate offices in Detroit buzzed with activity. The decision to erect a skyscraper was not merely a vanity project. It was a calculated move to burnish the Chrysler name and to inspire his employees. New York was the media capital. A tower bearing his name in the center of Manhattan would signal that the company was more than an assemblage of factories. It was a cultural force. To secure the site at 42nd Street and Lexington Avenue, Walter negotiated quietly with the Cooper Union, which owned the land. The school, founded by industrialist Peter Cooper, had a unique arrangement under which it paid no taxes on leased property. Cooper Union agreed to lease the land to Walter for 99 years. The arrangement meant that as long as the building stood, it would be exempt from certain taxes, giving him a financial advantage. When news broke that an automobile magnate was planning a tower, Manhattan's newspapers seized on the story. Editors speculated about height, style, and cost. Some critics sneered that a car manufacturer had no business erecting skyscrapers. Others applauded the audacity of combining two icons of modernity, the automobile and the skyscraper. The late 1920s also saw advances in building technologies. Structural engineers had perfected the steel frame, allowing skyscrapers to rise taller without thick, load-bearing walls. Elevators had become faster and safer, with automatic doors and multiple safety brakes. New zoning laws required building setbacks after a certain height to prevent dark canyons in the streets. Architects responded by creating tiered designs that expressed verticality while complying with regulations. Art Deco, with its emphasis on modernity and luxury, replaced the Gothic ornament of earlier towers. Materials such as aluminum and stainless steel became symbols of the machine age. Against this backdrop, Van Alen's vision for the Chrysler Building was both radical and inevitable. He drew inspiration from automotive forms, the curves of fenders, the gleam of radiator caps, the sleek lines of hood ornaments. The tower's corners featured replicas of the 1929 Chrysler radiator cap, complete with tiny wings, and the setbacks were accented with triangular windows reminiscent of hubcaps. He planned a crown of overlapping arches that would catch the sunlight like the fins of a car speeding down a highway. Walter loved the concept. It was not enough for his tower to be tall. It had to be beautiful, a piece of industrial art. As construction progressed, the rivalry with 40 Wall Street intensified. Craig Severance was determined to outdo his former partner. He kept a close eye on the Chrysler site, counting floors and reading building permits. He announced that his building would reach 925 feet, then quietly increased it to 927, and then again. Rumors flew that he planned to add a mast to carry a mooring for dirigibles, a nod to the recent transatlantic flights that had captured public imagination. Newspapers chronicled the duel. One column likened the competing projects to a boxing match, with each firm raising its fist a few feet higher. The public was enthralled. Walter and Van Alen, though outwardly calm, felt the pressure. They considered adding a dome, then a crest. None of those would suffice. The Spire plan offered the perfect combination of secrecy and spectacle. By building the spire inside the tower, they would avoid building height restrictions and catch their rivals unprepared. The operation required extraordinary coordination. Each section had to be small enough to fit inside the shaft, yet strong enough to withstand the winds at 1,000 feet. Riveters rehearsed the sequence, checking that they could align the holes and drive the red-hot rivets quickly. On the morning of the ascent, the entire building team held its breath. As each piece emerged, The steel cables sang under tension. The sections swung in the air like pendulums, then settled into place. When the final piece slid into position, cheers erupted from the street. For the rest of the day, passers-by gathered to stare at the glistening needle. Photographers scrambled to capture images for the evening papers. That night, the city buzzed with talk of the audacious stunt. Van Alen's gamble had paid off. The building would be known forever for the spire that appeared as if by magic. Beyond the spire, the Chrysler Building was a marvel of engineering. Its steel skeleton was designed to flex slightly in the wind, distributing stresses through diagonal bracing and sturdy corner columns. The exterior walls were non-structural, allowing for large windows and decorative panels. The basement housed massive boilers, electrical generators, and water pumps capable of circulating thousands of gallons a minute. 32 high-speed elevators, manufactured by Otis, whisked tenants to their floors at a rate of 1,000 feet per minute. The elevator cabs were lined with African wood veneers and stainless steel accents. The lobby was a study in luxury. Walls of red Moroccan marble, floors of black and white marble arranged in chevrons, and friezes depicting workers forging automobiles and airplanes. Overhead, Edward Trumbull's mural, Transport and Human Endeavor, sprawled across the ceiling, combining Art Deco figures, airplanes, and the Chrysler Building itself. At night, concealed floodlights illuminated the crown, turning the building into a lantern visible for miles. Engineers even designed special rainwater drains and lightning rods to protect the spire. No detail was too small. Walter instructed Van Alen to include spaces for car showrooms on the ground floor so that new models could be displayed beneath the glistening arches. The building thus served as both advertisement and architecture. The Cloud Club deserves its own legend. Opening in July 1930, it occupied the 66th, 67th, and 68th floors. Membership was by invitation only and limited to about 300 of the city's most influential businessmen. Each member paid a $1,000 initiation fee and annual dues. The club's rooms were decorated to evoke different moods. The grill room had an oak-beamed ceiling and walls adorned with carved ships, a nod to commerce. The main dining room featured futuristic murals of streamlined trains and airplanes, with an illuminated map of the United States that tracked the progress of member companies. A library offered leather chairs and mahogany shelves filled with books on art, history, and finance. A barber shop and gymnasium catered to the needs of busy executives. There were rumors of a hidden bar during Prohibition, where members could enjoy cocktails discreetly. Waiters wore tuxedos and memorized members' preferences. Deals worth millions were hatched over steaks and cigars. The Cloud Club became a symbol of corporate privilege, a place where the captains of industry could survey the city literally and figuratively. Yet beneath its elegance, the club also fostered exclusivity and separation. Women were not admitted except on special occasions, and the membership reflected the segregated social structures of the time. If the 1930s tested the resolve of the tower's financiers, they also revealed Walter's resilience. During the worst years of the Depression, automobile sales plummeted. Chrysler Corporation curtailed production, laid off workers, and slashed prices. Walter refused to cut wages as deeply as some competitors did, believing that loyalty would pay dividends when the economy improved. He authorized research into new models that would debut when prosperity returned. He also invested in humanitarian causes. He funded scholarship programs, supported hospitals, and contributed to the Boy Scouts. His philanthropy was not as widely publicized as his skyscraper, but those who benefited remembered his generosity. Meanwhile, life in the tower continued. Tenants, struggling to pay rent, occasionally moved out in the dead of night. Walter wrote off their debts, reasoning that empty space earned nothing. He kept the lobby spotless and the elevators polished. He allowed the 3rd Infantry Band to play lunchtime concerts in the lobby to attract visitors. When a New York newspaper asked if he regretted building the skyscraper given the economic collapse, he replied, "No, you have to plan for a long future. The depression will pass, but a building like this will stand for generations." The bond between Walter and Della was a steady anchor through these turbulent years. Della had known Walter since childhood. She bore him 5 children: Thelma, Francis, Catherine, Walter Jr., and another son who died young, and managed their households in various cities as his career advanced. Friends described her as gracious but firm, deeply involved in church and community work. She was not interested in the spotlight. When the Chrysler Building opened, she attended the dedication ceremony wearing a simple dress and pearls, applauding her husband from a distance. The stroke that felled Walter in 1938 alarmed her. She nursed him, oversaw his medication, and shielded him from the company's problems. When she suffered her own cerebral hemorrhage 2 months later, he was still bedridden. Her death was a blow he never anticipated. The house grew quiet. Their daughters visited often, but nothing could fill the void. In his final months, he withdrew from business, spending time with his grandchildren and reading. On his last day, he reportedly asked to be wheeled to the window so he could look across the water one more time. The man who had built a tower to touch the clouds died in a modest bedroom, looking out at the Long Island Sound. The years after Walter's death brought fresh challenges. Chrysler Corporation faced stiff competition from Ford and General Motors. The company's fortunes waxed and waned, but the tower remained a constant, albeit one increasingly separated from its namesake. In the 1940s and 1950s, war production and post-war prosperity kept the building's offices filled. The Cloud Club thrived. New Yorkers recognized the Chrysler Building as an emblem of hope after the war. It appeared in movies, postcard paintings, and magazine covers. Margaret Bourke-White, the renowned photographer, leased a studio on the 61st floor and captured iconic images of the city through its stainless steel eagles. She had to have a male co-signer for her lease, reflecting the gender norms of the time. Her photographs, showing the eagles looming like birds of prey over the city, helped cement the building's mythic status. Poets wrote about its silver crown. Artists sketched its silhouette. But behind the romance were practical problems. Heating a 77-story tower with 1930s boilers was expensive. Air conditioning systems had to be retrofitted. The windows, designed in an era before fluorescent lights, admitted little daylight. Tenants demanded open floor plans unsuited to the tower's narrow footprint. The advent of curtain wall skyscrapers in the 1950s and 1960s offered wide, bright spaces that the Chrysler Building could not match. Downtown Manhattan lost businesses to Midtown and then to suburbs. The tower that had once symbolized modernity seemed quaint. Ownership changed hands repeatedly. In 1953, Zeckendorf's group modernized the lobby, but could not stem the exodus of tenants. In the 1960s, a developer proposed adding a TV antenna spire to regain the height title, but the plan was abandoned. By the 1970s, the building's occupancy rate plummeted. Photographs from this era showed dim hallways and outdated office suites. The once busy Cloud Club hosted dwindling lunches. A reporter who visited in 1976 wrote that the steak knives were dull and the wood paneling smelled of stale smoke. When the club closed in 1979, members quietly removed their memorabilia. The space was sealed off, its murals hidden behind drywall. New York City itself was in crisis, teetering on bankruptcy, its streets plagued by crime. Investors avoided landmark skyscrapers. In 1997, Tishman Speyer bought the building and announced a restoration. Workers replaced broken tiles, rewired electrical systems, and polished the marble. For a brief moment, the Chrysler Building's lobby gleamed as it had in 1930. Tourists returned to admire its ceiling mural and Art Deco chandeliers. But the renovation did not change the building's fundamental limitations. The office floors remained small and the elevators crowded. The sale of a 90% stake to the Abu Dhabi Investment Council in 2008 was part of a wave of Middle Eastern investment in Western real estate. The purchase price of $800 million reflected not only the building's landmark status, but also the speculation of pre-recession markets. When the global financial crisis hit later that year, property values plunged. The council's managers found themselves paying rising ground lease payments to Cooper Union while collecting reduced rents. They patched leaks and fixed elevators, but major upgrades were deferred. 10 years later, RFR and Cigna Group negotiated to purchase the building for a reported $150 million. The dramatically lower price underscored the challenges of owning an aging icon. Analysts noted that ground lease payments were scheduled to soar from $7.75 million to $32.5 million annually by 2028, eroding profitability. Prospective tenants weighed the charm of the Art Deco lobby against the inconvenience of small floors and the cost of customizing them. Many chose newer towers at Hudson Yards or the World Trade Center. Through all these changes, the building remained a beloved subject of popular culture. It has appeared in films like Men in Black and Spider-Man, in photographs by Alfred Eisenstadt, and in novels by F. Scott Fitzgerald and E.B. White. Its spire has been struck by lightning countless times, each strike channeled safely to the ground by its system of conductors. Its gargoyles have watched generations of New Yorkers traverse the streets below, horse-drawn carriages giving way to yellow cabs, Model A's replaced by Teslas. In December, the crown glows red and green. In October, it shines orange. On Independence Day, it flashes red, white, and blue. Children visiting the city point and ask, "What is that shiny building?" Tour guides recount tales of secret spires and auto tycoons. On clear nights, the building's stainless steel reflects the moon, casting a ghostly glow across Midtown. For architects and historians, the Chrysler Building is a case study in style. It represents the peak of Art Deco architecture, a movement that celebrated speed, luxury, and modernity. Its decorative motifs, sunbursts, chevrons, zigzags, were inspired by the machine age. It expresses optimism and a belief in technological progress. Yet its history also reveals the precariousness of such faith. The building went up at the height of the Roaring Twenties and opened just as the Great Depression began. It embodies the hubris of men who sought to pierce the clouds without considering economic storms. The controversy over Van Alen's unpaid fee highlights the often exploitative relationship between patrons and artists. The decline of the building amid mid-century modernism shows how quickly tastes change. Today, there is renewed appreciation for its craftsmanship, but many of its original artisans were forgotten for decades. When the building's crown was restored in the 1990s, craftsmen had to relearn techniques for working with stainless steel because those skills had nearly vanished. As you think about Walter Chrysler's tower, consider the layers of human experience it contains. Each rivet was set by a worker balanced on a beam hundreds of feet above the street, trusting in his colleagues to catch him if he slipped. Each Art Deco panel was designed by an artist who believed in the marriage of beauty and engineering. Each tenant who signed a lease weighed the prestige of the address against the price per square foot. Each investor who purchased the tower imagined a future of steady returns and learned about deferred maintenance. Each tourist who visited the observation deck felt a thrill of height and the vertigo of leaning toward a narrow window. Each child who glimpsed the spire from a train window carried away an impression of New York's skyline. Each storyteller who recounts this tale adds another layer of meaning. The dark story of Walter Chrysler and his tower is not simply a cautionary tale. It is a reflection of the human drive to leave a mark, to transcend one's origins, to build something that will outlast one's life. It is a story about engineering and ego, triumph and tragedy, cars and clouds, betrayal and legacy. It is a mirror reflecting our deepest urges, the hunger to build and the ever-present fear to fall.